Around a month ago, I learned about an ancient torture method called the choke pear, where it was basically a butt plug, but instead it expanded inside of you and stretched open your guyat until the point of no return. But I'm not gonna lie, instead of feeling scared, I just felt rock hard and kind of wished that it didn't get voted so early. Anyways, today I want to rank some of the less enjoyable torture methods of all time. The worst punishments in human history by good enough.
Let's start with the bad and slowly work our way towards the stuff of nightmares. Number 10, the Rat Dungeon. If you were alive in London, England during the medieval period, you would have definitely heard about the Rat Dungeon.
Bro, why are you asking us as if like potentially one of the audience members may have lived during this time? Is this like reincarnation or something?
Since this punishment struck paralyzing fear into the hearts of even the most hardened criminals. This was a cell that was located at the bottom of the London Tower, where prisoners were shackled and chained in complete darkness. But here's the thing, the dungeon was connected to the nearby river and just below the river's waterline, so that when the water levels rose, all the rats that lived along the riverbed would be pushed out of their shelters and forced to swim downstream. This would of course lead the hungry and angry rats towards the entrance of the dungeon, where they would then come face to face with the prisoner.
But do you think this was intentional though? Like, was this intentionally part of the design of the rat dungeon? Like, this could have been a, what is it, like, is it a bug or a feature? Because surely if they like intentionally made it like that, it would be like considered too inhumane, like even for like London standards back then.
But to the unlucky prisoner, he never actually saw anything, and all he would hear were the soft scurries of the rat's feet entering the dungeon. And in a matter of minutes, these soft noises were in the hundreds and all around him. These angry and aggressive rats would then begin to take small bites from the prisoner, who had no way of defending himself. Now, he might be able to shake the rats off for a few hours, but eventually the prisoner would pass out from pure exhaustion. And while he slept, the rats would continue to take bites from his flesh. Eventually, when he would wake up, he would discover hundreds of bites throughout his entire body.
But the thing is, like, I was sort of thinking, why don't you just bite them back? Like, okay, I know in the UK, like, maybe you don't have like too many teeth, and so maybe biting them back wouldn't really be that effective. But let's just say you somehow have a healthy set of teeth. Okay, that does not look healthy. Okay, like this. Okay, like let's just say you somehow in the UK have teeth like this. Can't you just like bite the rat's back and just like eat them before they eat you? Because your bite is like 100 times stronger than their bite. So you could easily just one-shot them with a single bite. You just like bite the head off.
But it didn't stop there. The prisoner was left here for days or weeks on end, depending on his crime. But towards the end of the medieval period, this form of punishment just got more and more deranged, eventually becoming a form of execution, where prisoners would just be thrown in the dungeon and forgotten about.
Okay, honestly, I don't think I would die in this situation. I think I would be able to outbite the rats. Like, I genuinely think I'd be able to out-eat the rats. So I think this would be like slightly painful for the amount of time it would take, you know, for me to finally like finish eating all the rats.
Number 9, the rack. This was yet another punishment that took place in the London Tower.
Bro, why does London have all the worst ones? And why are the teeth like that? Okay, I understand the stereotype, but bro, I feel like this is a little bit too far. So is every single stick figure based in London just gonna have teeth like this in your drawings?
The rack was a torture device that was used in many places throughout history. This form of punishment was originally designed for getting a confession, usually from criminals, slaves, or prisoners of war. The device looked like a large ladder, but instead of secure steps, they would actually rotate like a rolling pin. You see, when a prisoner was placed on the rack, he would have his feet and wrists tied to a ratchet pulley system.
Bro, why is that face, bro? Why? He's blushing and he's drooling, and it looks like he's enjoying this. This looks like some sort of like bondage sort of like scene in like some corner,
where two legal officials would slowly tighten the ropes and locking them in place, placing an increasing amount of strain on the prisoner's shoulders, hips, knees, and elbows with every single turn. This was all done to get information, but of course, a lot of the times the truth was not accepted as reality, and the prisoner would then begin to say whatever he believed the officials wanted to hear. Sometimes it would work and the prisoners would be let go, while other times they would be tortured even more for lying. When the whole ordeal was over, prisoners were usually released with dislocated joints, but oftentimes they were left completely paralyzed.
What, so they just dump them like outside the front door of the tower after they're done, and like they don't even like book them an Uber to get home? All their joints are dislocated. They can't even they won't be able to move or walk by themselves.
That was the case in England in 1447 when a 25-year-old girl named Anne Askew would be tortured on the rack for hours and hours on end and left completely paralyzed after all her joints were dislocated. She was then carried on a chair and burned alive at the stake. All this because she read and memorized scriptures from the Bible, which she preached in private to a small group of women, which were the exact women she refused to name and expose during her torture.
Wait, but I swear when I went to London like last year, I swear I saw at least one church there. Do they not do the what is this, Christianity?
You see, during this time period, if you followed any religion other than the Catholic Church, you better not say a word to anybody, including your own husband, which was the person that turned her in.
Okay, that is definitely a little bit awkward. Okay, I mean, I think 100% the husband was cheating on the wife and just wanted an excuse to get rid of the wife so that he could like continue cheating without the wife like being an obstruction. But I mean, honestly, this punishment is not it's not insanely bad. Like, at least you can survive it. This is not like, this wouldn't kill you. I don't think this kills anyone. And this guy even finds it slightly kinky. And so, honestly, I'd say this is calm. This is calm. Like, for me personally, this is calm.
Number 8. Keel hauling. This brutal punishment was carried out at sea on sailors who would steal or be violent towards others and would usually result in death. Keel hauling would start with a sailor having his arms tied with a rope, then looped around the entire circumference of the ship before being tied off to his feet. The sailor would then be thrown overboard while the group of men on board pulled on the rope to slowly drag him around the outside of the ship, including over the keel, which is how this punishment gets its name. But a lot of the times, the sailor wouldn't even have to worry about it, since they were dead before they ever reached it. Kinda just depends on how hard the guys on the rope feel like working that day. Not only would the sailors be drowning and getting their backs and necks broken on the keel, they were also getting sliced apart like a cheese grater by all the sharp barnacles on the outside of the ship. But if by some miracle a sailor actually happens to make it all the way around the ship without dying, one of 3 things will happen. 1, he would be sent for round 2, and for sure be dead by then. 2, be freed and allowed back on the ship, where he would then slowly die to infections. Or 3, live the rest of his life single and being made fun of, since he was now fully covered in scars from head to toe.
Okay, I've heard of this punishment in a different video, but the thing is, like, if I was in this situation, I don't think I would drown. Like, I don't think I would drown. Like, you can hold your breath long enough to survive there. Like, even if the people are pulling the rope really slowly, I think like the captain will order them to like just keep pulling the rope, and so you're not going to be like left down here forever. Like, you're eventually going to like come back up. And so for me, drowning wouldn't be an issue. The barnacles might be an issue. It'd be a little bit sharp, but I mean, the barnacles would just like scratch you. Like, it's only a little bit of pain, like nothing like anyone can't handle. And then the keel, like, yeah, it looks sharp, but in reality, I don't think it's like actually like sharp. Like, sometimes they don't even make them sharp. Like, they have like a little like a round thing on the end of it, and so that wouldn't pierce you, because it's not like it's like a cone. It's like a blade sort of thing. And so honestly, yeah, this one it would probably be slightly painful, maybe a little bit more than painful, but yeah, I don't think this would kill me. This is pretty easy to survive, like relatively easy.
Number 7, crushed by elephants. Now we are getting to the part of the list where living is no longer an option.
Are you sure?
This form of punishment has been used by many countries throughout history, but was most recently used by India in the 19th century, which is really not that long ago if you really think about it. Like, your great-grandma could have witnessed one of these. What type of crimes would you have to commit to be crushed by an elephant, you might ask? Well, apparently if you failed to pay your taxes. That was good enough.
Jeez, so that means Royal Pear is actually cooked. Like, he literally has a video titled "I paid for a tax evasion edit." And so if he lived in India during the 1900s, bro, 100% he's not surviving.
And of course, stealing or being an enemy soldier was also a great way to become a tortilla. But the most disturbing case in history was when the 4th Mughal Emperor of India ordered an enormous amount of criminals to be crushed to death in a single day, simply because he was bored and needed some entertainment.
I mean, fair enough. This is not like nothing that any normal person wouldn't do. Bro, is this person insane? Is this person genuinely insane?
The guy who forgot to pay his taxes, crushed. The man who stole an apple from the local market, crushed. The little orphan who jaywalked across the street, crushed. The man who murdered his neighbor and added his remains to a large pot of tomato soup, then fed that soup to his family and watched them eat it from the shadows with a creepy smirk on his face. He's alright.
What?
Apparently,
are you sure? Are you? I mean, if I was in charge of India at that time, Loki, yeah, he would need to get crushed.
He's alright. Apparently he makes a damn good soup. There are a few ways that this public
That's good
execution
enough.
goes
What?
down, but one thing always stays the same. There's always a guy on top of the elephant controlling its every move. And this was very intentional, as this was meant to showcase just how amazing the ruling class were. I mean, look at them. They can control an elephant. Now be impressed. The first method of execution was the one that you better pray for if this was going to be your fate. Here, the criminals would have their arms tied behind their back and their heads placed on a pedestal, where it was then crushed like a grape by the elephant's foot. Now, the second method is much more cruel. The criminal would be placed flat on the floor with their arms tied behind their backs. Then the elephants would be guided to walk over the person's body, and hopefully the criminal would die on the first go. But sometimes they just end up crushing a leg or an arm, so the elephant then has to make a U-turn and try again and again and again. The final and worst way is when a highly trained elephant was guided to slowly crush the person limb by limb.
Oh.
They would first crush the arms, then the legs, and then poke holes in them with the tusks until eventually dealing the final blow to the head or torso. This is the more theatrical route that rulers like the fourth Mughal love to take, and made for a truly traumatizing experience for everyone.
But then why would you even like attend this? Like why? Like I don't even understand why like public executions like were even a thing. Like were they forced to attend it? Like maybe they got free tickets or something. Maybe there was like a 2-for-1 coupon or something, like buy one get one free or something. But I mean, honestly, for this one, like realistically, I don't think there's any obvious way to escape this. I think like once you're in this position, you'd most likely die. Although maybe you could try bribe the elephants with I don't know, what do elephants eat? Maybe you bribe them with like a free like 12-month OnlyFans subscription of like Sophie Rain or something.
Number 6. Impalement. Probably one of the grossest and most cruel forms of punishment on the list. This has been used by a few countries throughout history, but was most recently used in Egypt in the 17th century, usually against criminals that were highway robbers, grave thieves, or anyone who would try and start a rebellion. This punishment would start by having a criminal lay flat on their stomachs with their arms tied behind their back. They would then be sliced open with a razor to increase the size of their back door. And as soon as that incision was made, the cut would be lathered with paste to instantly stop the blood. They would then thrust in and
Okay, you gotta chill with the faces, man. You actually gotta chill. They start impaling you from the guyat, like they shove this wooden thing up your guyat, and this is your face. Instead of feeling pain, you feel. Okay, what is... Okay.
They would then thrust in a long wooden stake that was the width of a man's arm, which was sharply tapered on one end. They then begin to hit the wooden stake with the mallet, pushing it further and further in. And of course, the stake was greased up beforehand to make this process a lot smoother.
It was lubed
and
up
once
with baby
the
oil,
stake has
with
popped
Diddy
out of
oil.
the criminal's shoulder, head, or mouth, they were pretty much long gone. He is then planted next to a busy road, like a Halloween decoration, to remind everyone that this is what happens when you break the law. They will be left there for the entire day and removed the following morning before the body begins to stink. But wait, there's another version of this as well. You see, on some occasions, the criminals would only be impaled just deep enough to keep them in place, but not too deep that it would cause immediate death. They would do this by having stakes that had a seated position on them to prevent the person from sliding down any further. They would then be placed on a busy road where they would suffer for hours and hours, pleading to people walking by for help, until eventually succumbing to their wounds.
But I mean, what are people meant to do? Like, how are you meant to help this person? Like, I assume this would be like a pretty tall rod, like a tall impalement rod, so that no one can like, you know, climb up there and help them. But even then, I don't know whether like this guy can be saved. Like his guyat is stretched so wide that like it's literally the point of no return. Like you're never going to be able to like do a normal poo after that, because you're just going to be leaking the entire day. Unless you're me though, because basically like my guy, okay, you're not going to believe me, but it can stretch quite wide, because basically I've been pretty like constipated my entire life, and so most of my poos are like really like rock hard, like really like wide, massive, and so I've been pretty much trained in that department. And so if I was in this situation, all I would need to do is just grab this wooden part of the the impalement stick, and just push myself up off, or I could just clench my butt cheek so hard that it sort of like the guy closes up, but as it closes up, it will sort of force me up to the top of it, and then I'd be able to like just leave like easily. And so this would be pretty calm. I don't even think it would be painful, honestly.
Number 5. Poena culae. Poena culae is Latin for penalty of the sack. And that's exactly what it was.
Wait, what sack? What sack are you talking about? Are you talking about like the ball sack, or like some other sack?
And that's exactly what it was, just a lot more terrifying and cruel. This was an exclusive punishment for anyone that would murder their own family members. This was first seen in the 2nd century in Rome, but would later be used by the Germans in the 18th century. This all begins with a convicted murderer being placed inside a thick leather bag. But just to make sure the man isn't lonely, they would then add a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey. I don't know what these animals did to deserve this, but hey, at least the evil family murderer doesn't die alone. Once all the animals are added inside the bag, it is then sewn shut, creating an almost airtight seal.
But I mean, I guess you would sort of die of like suffocation and like a lack of oxygen before you can even like get killed by the animals. But I saw this in a previous video as well, and like, yeah, the solution for this, it's quite an easy solution. So basically, you get chucked in there with like a dog, a chicken, a viper, and a monkey, and these are all animals that are like technically edible. And so I don't think it would be like that hard to like, you know, unalive them and just like consume them.
Now you would think this would be horrible enough, but no, this is just the beginning, because as soon as the bag is sewn shut, it is then tossed into the ocean. But don't worry, later on, these murderers would be given the option to either be placed inside the leather bag or be sent to perform at the Colosseum, where they can perform the act of being mauled to death in front of all of their loved ones and peers. You know, at least they had the option.
But I mean, honestly, I feel like you'd have a higher chance of surviving this compared to like the other one. Like the other one, you'd most likely just drown when you get chucked in the ocean because it's an almost airtight seal. And so like the water would eventually seep in and then there wouldn't be any way for you to like get out because it's like a leather sack. But for this, as long as you can like successfully 1v1 a bear, I think you have a solid chance of surviving. So honestly, I'd say this one is probably slightly painful. I don't think death is guaranteed unless you get like the sack in the ocean. Maybe you'd probably die if you get the sack in the ocean. But if they give you the option to 1v1 a bear, I think it would only be like, maybe it would probably be calm. Like this, like for some people, it's not too, like this is not too hard.
Number 4, rats. This is one of the most sick punishments in all of human history, and it involves the use of rats. I will cover 2 of them here as they are very similar. The first use of this form of punishment dates back to 1568 during the 80 Years' War. A Dutch leader named Diederik Sonoy would often use this method of punishment, which involved placing a rat inside of a clay bowl, then placing it topside down on a prisoner's stomach, chest, face, or groin. Then the back of the bowl would be...
Whoa, you gotta chill, bro. Why are you giving me this face when the rat is like diddling your groin? Is this really your reaction? I feel like it would literally be eating your dingling.
Then the back of the bowl would be heated with either a torch or some coals, causing the rat to go into a full-on panic, trying to escape from the heat. And its only way out was to burrow into the human. Once inside, it would continue to chew and tear apart whatever was in its way, desperately searching for a way out. Eventually, the rat finds its way out of the maze and survives. The same could not be said for the prisoner. But the second method was much, much worse.
I mean, can it really get much worse than that though?
And was highly secretive since it was used under the guidance of the dictator Augusto Pinochet, where he held power from 1976 through 1983. They called it the rectoscope.
What?
And I'm sure you have already figured out where this is going. Yes, it's exactly what you think. They would place a tube on a prisoner's back door, then insert a rat inside of the tube. The rat would then begin to burrow its way in. These people were so sick that they actually expected the prisoners to answer questions while this was going on.
What?
Eventually, the rat would find its way in and begin to move forward to find its way out. Nobody really knows how many people died from this punishment, but we do know that a ton of people went missing when this dictator was in charge.
So basically, they'd force a rat to enter your guyat and move all the way up your digestive system until it eventually made its way out your mouth. Because your digestive tract, it's all connected. Like if the rat enters down here, they just have to go right up, left, down, right, up, and then they go through the small intestine, then they come out through the stomach, and then they can go out up the esophagus, which is like, you know, your throat area. It goes up there, and then it can come out your mouth pretty easily. So technically, as long as the rat isn't dumb, it can make its way out without causing like an insane amount of damage. Although I assume most rats are pretty dumb, and so they just try to like, they just eat. They just try to do a straight line. Like they just ignore all the turns, like the maze and everything. They just go here, they just eat through here, this wall, this wall, this wall, this wall, and just come out like that. So that would, yeah, that would probably cause you to bleed to death. And so once that rat is inside you, I think, yeah, I don't think you could realistically survive that.
Number 3. Gibbeting. The last known use was in the early 1900s in Afghanistan. This all came to light in 1921 when the National Geographic published this image in their magazine. This was also used in the United States from time to time during the 17th and 18th century. One notable example was in Boston, Massachusetts, where a few pirates were hung at the Boston Harbor, which served as a warning to any sailors that were approaching Boston. Now let's talk about England, since they love this form of punishment so much. In England, this was used on traitors, murderers, pirates, and thieves. But after the year 1752, the Murder Act was passed, which required that all convicted murderers must be put to death by being publicly dissected or by gibbeting of some sort.
Wait, this was an actual law in London? They had to do this? Bro, they're doing... they're not doing surgery on a grape, they're doing surgery on this living murderer?
And over 134 confirmed people met this fate. The most common form of gibbeting were actually cages, and they looked like this. It was an all-steel cage that was shaped tightly to the form of a human body, which was so tight that it would not allow the person inside to move. They were then hung 30 feet or more off the floor, usually on a public road or water hole, to ensure that the most amount of people could witness this monstrosity. But I can only assume this was more annoying than anything, since every time you get thirsty and needed to fill up your container of water, you would have to deal with the dying man begging you for a sip.
Over here!
But the annoyance and torture of the public didn't stop there, because after the criminals would die in the cages, the body would be left inside to rot for years and years on end, with the locals complaining that the smell of death was so pungent that they couldn't even sleep at night.
Well, I mean, what do they expect, bro? You're leaving the body there not for like days, not for months, but for years? Yeah, like I feel like that's a little bit overkill. Like literally, that is overkill. Like he's dead already. Like he's overkilled. He's dead already for years.
There's even been reports that some human remains stayed inside of these cages for over 20 years before a government official would finally remember to clean it out.
Oh, how forgetful! I forgot to clean out that 20-year-old dead body. It's hanging in the sky on that pole. But I mean, I didn't really understand what this was gibbeting. So I guess it's just like almost the same as hanging, except you're just stuck in a cage, but like the cage is like very conformed to your body. So I assume these cages would have to be custom made. And so that would be like a little bit expensive to manufacture as opposed to just like, you know, the traditional way to do it. And so the way you would die would be like, yeah, starvation. But I mean, realistically, okay, so you look at the cage. It doesn't really look like that tight. Like it's meant to be so tight that you can't even move. But like surely after the 5th day of hanging here, you'd be so starved that like you'd lose like quite a bit of weight. And so you'd be like skinnier than like sort of what you sort of started off with. And so couldn't you just like, you know, just like slip through one of the holes over here and just escape? Like, would that not be an option? Like for me, like that I feel like that could be an option, honestly. And so if I was here, I feel like this would be like, yeah, this would be a little bit calm, honestly. I'd like maybe a little bit painful, like having to starve for a few days, but after the first few days, you'd be skinny enough to like slip through the crack and just like escape. So this would be pretty calm, honestly.
Number 2, scaphism. This was a form of punishment that was used by the ancient Persian Empire on anyone that would be convicted of murder. First, the criminal would be placed inside of a boat on their backs and tied down. The boat had 4 holes cut out so that the person's arms and legs would be outside of the boat and in the water. They were then force-fed large quantities of honey and milk until their stomachs were visibly full. They would then proceed to lather their entire body with the milk and honey as well. After all these steps were completed, he was then pushed out to the middle of the lake where he was completely exposed to the heat of the sun. But the sun would soon become the least of his worries. You see, the reason they fed him milk and honey was not because it was a great last meal, but because this combination causes a person to get extreme diarrhea, which mixed with the sweet honey attracts rodents, bugs, wasps, bees, flies, and whatever other animals live near the lake. After being tormented by the animals throughout the entire night, you would think that the daytime maybe gets a little better. No, because as soon as the sun rises the following day, the person inside of the boat gets another gigantic meal of milk and honey and an additional lathering. This would be done on a daily basis to prolong the punishment for as long as possible. It was also well documented that the rodents would continuously attempt to burrow inside of the person through their back door.
Yeah, that would probably not feel pleasant at all. A rat just trying to enter your guyat. But I mean, what's with the face again? Why does this guy enjoy it when anything enters his guyat?
They were probably trying to get a head start on their next meal. A writer named John Sonaris wrote in great detail about one of these incidents. He would go on to say that it was one of the most horrid and cruel forms of punishment, since it was terribly long and seemed to have no end in sight. He wrote about a man who survived for an entire 17 days before he finally died from his wounds. Apparently, the man spent his last few days with his entire face completely covered with wasps, and his flesh rotting away, filled with swarms of parasites and worms, all while being covered in his own filth.
Okay, so I've heard of this punishment in a previous video, and yeah, it is definitely quite bad. Like, you're pretty much bathing in your own, like, liquidy, wet, explosive diarrhea for, like, 17 days until you finally unalive. But, I mean, honey is, like, it's low-key expensive. Like, honey is, like, kind of expensive, honestly. Like, for Manuka honey, this is $1,900, which is, yeah, that is a little bit expensive, but instead you're getting fed milk and honey for free. Honey, like the expensive honey, for free every single day for 17 days. And so even though this is meant to be some sort of like a punishment method, at least for the last 17 days of your life, you'll be able to, like, you know, enjoy the expensive honey. And so I wouldn't say it's get out level, because at least you get the honey. I'd probably say, yeah, you'd most likely die in the situation. I don't really see logically how you could get out of this situation unless you sort of like bribe these people to let you out. Like, that would be the only way. But apart from that, like, yeah, you're 100% probably going to die.
Number 1. The oubliette. Oubliette simply means to forget in French. This was a punishment that was used in many places throughout history, including in the London Tower, which had a small and confined room called Little Ease. Not only was this room pitch black, it was also so small that prisoners could not sit, stand, or lay down while inside it, and they would be left in this uncomfortable position for days on end. One of the most famous oubliettes is not the one in the London Tower, but in the neighboring district of Warwick, inside of Warwick Castle. Here, deep underground in the castle's dungeons, is a very small and narrow cell, completely made of stone, which has a metal door to close it shut. Prisoners were tossed inside of the cell and forgotten about, as the name implies. The prisoner would just have to sit there and wait for their inevitable death, which usually came in a few days from dehydration or starvation. Now, of course, this would be the best case scenario, because in reality, most of the time there would already be a rotting corpse inside of the cell to keep the new prisoner company. The previous occupier of the cell would serve as a daily reminder of his upcoming fate. But that's not the only companions that he will have, since the underground dungeons are completely infested with rats that have developed a taste for human flesh. But wait, there's more. These oubliettes existed in many of the castles throughout Europe, and in recent times they have actually discovered these dungeons with dozens, if not hundreds, of human remains inside of it, as proof that they were hardly ever cleaned. Like in Leap Castle of Ireland, where in 1900, during the castle's renovation, a worker found a small opening behind a wall inside of the chapel. This hole had an 8-foot drop that led to a large oubliette, and what the worker found inside shocked him.
Bro, why does that sound like a Dhar Mann title? What he found inside shocked him.
Since it was filled with so many skeletons that they needed multiple cartloads to clear it all out. But just when you think this section is over, it just keeps on giving. You see, there's been many stories of men who have been placed inside one of these dungeons and kept alive for years and years on end, surviving off crumbs of food and minimal amounts of water, prolonging their inevitable demise for as long as humanly possible. These cells were sometimes even placed on ground level so they can hear the voices and laughter of the people outside. An experience that they will never get again in this lifetime.
Wait, so you're telling me that was rank number 1? That was the number 1 worst punishment in human history? I mean, that just seems very basic. Like, that seems pretty calm. It seems very basic compared to the other ones, especially this one. Like, this one seems 100 times worse than this. Like, this is just like being put in like a little cell, whereas this one, you are bathing in your own diarrhea. But I mean, the concerning thing I sort of realized is that maybe the reason why this guy didn't put this as the worst one, and maybe he prefers this as a punishment compared to this one, is because at least with this one, they get the rat like sort of exploring that guy at, and so at least like maybe this will be comforting for him, and maybe that's also why all these other ones are ranked like not as bad as this one, because with these other ones you have like some sort of thing entering your gaiats. Like, this one had the rat entering the gaiats, and then this one had the rat diddling the dingling, and then this one had the rod entering the gaiats, and then this one had some freaky prisoner that was into like the bondage and stuff.